Hi, I'm Marie Tierney. I'm a production manager, I'm a designer, and I also uh, teach theatre.
I am. Thanks a million for taking part in these Access chats. I kind of come clean. I know Marie for many, many years. We've done an awful lot of work together, which we kind of come to later on. And also currently, Marie is on the board of Access. So, Marie, thanks. I'll have to watch my P's and Q's now when I talk to you as well. Come here, Marie. Take me back to you as a young girl. Like, was theatre in your blood? Was it kind of something that you were always interested in?
Well, my father was involved for over 30 years in the local drama group, the amateur drama group, Clough Drama Group. And so I grew up around that because he directed all their shows for years and years and years. And he used to put me in them the odd time. But I remember being in one, I can't even remember the name of it, and he's put me in it. And I had one line, and it was 4 nights, and I forgot it 3 nights. So I'm not really, I'm not really meant to be on the stage. But I was in a show when I was in school. I was in the Diary of Anne Frank. I was Woman Who Brings Cabbage. So that's about the size of my performance.
Destined for stardom.
Yeah, my father and my aunt were in a band, the Ballymun Ceilidh band, and so there was always music. We all learned the piano. We all tried to learn the accordion. We did Irish dancing. It was all that sort of thing.
Okay.
You know, so,
and so, but performing, you kind of knew early on wasn't.
I did well. I was kind of in my own world, I suppose, about it. I really enjoyed it, but I loved being backstage. But I didn't know that that's what I loved about it. I just loved the whole feel of being. We used to do the shows in the town hall, and I used to love the smell and the excitement when the audience were coming in and you were backstage and stuff like that. I loved it, absolutely loved it.
And was there like in school? Was it kind of like was it something that would be kind of through secondary school? Was it something that you were kind of remained involved in, or did it kind of separate away from you?
Well, I think I went to school in Nina, in the Convent of Mercy in Nina, and they were all very much into music. We had a nun there who was she was big into choirs. Now I can't sing, but she did a lot of music, and we did musicals. And there was an English teacher, Mary Morgan, who was a huge influence on me, and a lot of the people that she taught. She was brilliant. She was absolutely wonderful, and she had a huge interest in theatre. In fact, I think she taught Emer Murphy in the Abbey as well, and I think Emer got her in to see King Lear there a few years ago, and we all went for tea with her.
Wow,
really good, yeah. And that's a long time ago, but yeah, it was. The school did have an interest in many extracurricular activities to do with performance and singing as well. And there was I think North Tipperary in Nina now, they have a very good, there was a Nina drama group, and there was a lot of drama. There was about 5 drama groups in a very small area in amateur drama groups. So there was always something to go to. There was musicals or whatever.
And did you stay? I mean, would you have stayed in like with your father? Would you have kind of stayed involved in those? Like when you were leaving school, was it like what was the next thing for you? What was
okay. Well, when I left school, I went to work in the Botanic Gardens. I went to do a course in the Botanic Gardens in horticulture, community horticulture.
How do you get from Nina to the Botanic Garden? I mean, that must have been a really.
That's what I wanted to do. I still do. You should see my garden. I always wanted to do something to do. I grew up on a farm. I always wanted to do something to do with the land and to do with trees mostly. And I applied to loads of different things when I left school, but the only thing I really wanted to do was I wanted to go to the Botanic Gardens. So I got in there on the course, but of course then I was only 17 or something when I left school, because you didn't do a transition year then. And I came up and I went to the Botanic Gardens, and I was living in Dublin. And then I got involved in politics. Now, I had been kind of political for about 2 years before I left school. I remember bringing the Communist Manifesto into religion class once and causing all sorts of havoc. But I did get involved in politics. And then, because I met the infamous Shawnee Lamb, I don't know if you know Shawnee Lamb, he's involved in the inner city area. And he got me to join up a theatre company called the Bread and Butter Theatre Company. It had Gerald Leary in it, Mill Fleming, who's Curtis Fleming's mother. She's passed away now. Maura Heffernan, and several more people. He said, join up. They're doing a show called The Risen People in the Project. So I said, fair enough. And off I went. I was game for anything at the time. So in I went to the project to be part of this group, and we were the people of Dublin. We were the extras in The Risen People, which was directed by Jim Sheridan, or Shay Sheridan as he was then. And there was a load of people in it. There was Johnny Murphy was in it, Garrett was in it, Ina May, Alan Stanford. It was a long list of all the people, that were around theatre at the time. And it was massively exciting. It was absolutely brilliant. So, and it was really successful, I suppose, it was a very, very, that's a great play anyway, but that was a brilliant production of it. So then but I did realize, I suppose, I was on the stage, but I was helping out backstage as well. And I guess I realized doing that I preferred doing that. So somebody asked me then after that for another show, would I help out doing costumes? So I did, because my mother had taught me to sew when I was at home. So I was able to sew. So not brilliantly, but I was handy enough. And then I started doing, and then somebody said, will you come and do the costumes for a theatre and education show? And it just snowballed from that,
Go back there. I mean, that's, because that's folklore in Irish theatre, that, that Timon project, that particular production. But also you say kind of, finding politics at a young age, horticulture, and then arriving in, arriving in, and cause havoc, as I imagine you probably did in school in Nina, and then kind of arriving up, and then suddenly you're in at the heart of, I'm not working class theatre, but that kind of new groundswell of kind of, work that was coming.
Well, there was a real feel at the time. It was very exciting. First of all, the project was really exciting. It had a whole food restaurant. It had a little cinema. It had an art space. It had a theatre, and it had a performance, kind of like on Fridays that have gigs, in the art space and things like that. Maybe a little bit later than all that. That was all happening at that time. A bit like the way the Axis has loads of different things going on there now. But I mean, it was a really, really exciting space to be in. There was loads of stuff. People were always coming in. And the project has recently, before all this happened, people were doing that as well. They had the space in the lobby and you were able to call in. But the original project was like buzzing all the time. It was unbelievable. The amount of people that came in through it, and you never knew what you were going to see. You could go in and see I remember seeing something that, a piece of performing art where somebody ate spaghetti hoops and then puked them up on a sheet, and I was lovely. So there was always stuff happening there, and there was a real sense that we could do anything. There was hardly any money. We were in Temple Bar, which was it was not the Temple Bar it is now. It was the old kind of run-down places, but you could find rehearsal spaces because all the buildings were all closed up, it was just coming into that big recession, so in the 80s. So there was kind of nothing happening there. It was way before the regeneration of and there was places like, there was a place in Crow Street, I can't remember the name of it now, but I remember Christy Moore's sister Eilish used to work in there. There was a whole food restaurant and a bookshop, and gigs used to happen in there as well. It was incredible, really, really exciting at the time, I remember.
Also,
especially for some.
Yeah, no, I'd say that like from someone arriving up from a rural setting and around that time. But also, you mentioned the politics and the kind of the drive in the arts in Dublin, and the kind of that frontierism of being able to do it. And I suppose, in a way that's fed through your whole career, Marie, that kind of sense of you know, I mean, obviously, like anyone else, we're all guns for hire, and we kind of do work, you know, but the work that kind of, you know, when you look back through your career, there's certain artists or kind of spaces or in things that you've kind of associated yourself with, and it's kind of that same ethos seems to be there throughout your whole career.
Yeah. Well, I guess I met a few people early on, like for instance, Donald O'Kelly. I met Donald O'Kelly. I was working. I don't remember exactly how I met him, but I was working in a restaurant called Downstairs, and Donald used to come in there for his lunch, and I don't know how we ended up talking, but I ended up doing a piece of street theatre for the Dunstore Strikers with him, and there was a whole gang of us did it, and we used to go down and perform it in Henry Street on a Saturday, and it was that was really kind of like, we really felt like we were making something for it. There was loads of other people used to come along and do things there as well, but I think myself and Donald put that together. I remember Donald was playing Ben Dunn. It was, and there was things like that, and then meeting Joe Byrne, and Joe had a very different kind of and a very European way of going about things. But Joe is very political as well, and Declan and all the people that I worked with in Co-Motion.
Yeah.
It really felt like that things that I believed in, it was possible to get it out through theatre. And particularly at that time. And you felt like if you felt strongly about something, you were able to do something about that issue through theatre or through performance. And the same thing, like, I mean, the Birmingham Six, the Guildford Four, worked on the Parade of Innocence and the River Parade of Innocence and things like that as well. Worked with Robert Balla on those, and everybody who was political, everybody who was a performer really, was involved in those as well. So there always seems, and there always is, an issue. I mean, if you look at it now, there's really big issues here at the moment. There's the issue with people in direct provision, there's the homelessness, there's the racism that's been directed at travellers, there's the misogyny, and there's all of the things that require us to kind of look at them and say, what can I do about this?
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
I think it's interesting as well, because I think from knowing you for over the years and from working with you, there's kind of and I think, you know, this happens actually, I suppose, an awful lot more maybe explicitly in the backstage work or in the kind of production end of theatre, is that, you know, that your craft is not separate from yourself. Do you know what I mean? You kind of, it is something that it is obviously a craft. You know, even we mentioned before we come on, we press record in relation to like your time as production manager of kind of, you know, you have crew that you like working with because you know their skill set, you know their craft people. And I think there's an awful lot of invisible kind of people within the arts that don't get spoken about a lot or get kind of taken for granted. I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, taken for granted, but yeah, there's a kind of support work that you only realize it's not there when it's either done wrong or not at all.
I know. Well, I think there's kind of it's not everywhere, but I don't think there's some people do not understand how even people who work in theatre, they do not understand how the production works. You know, I've done shows, say for instance, where I've been so busy on the show that I've come in at some point after the opening night, and someone has come up to me and said, "Hi, I'm in the show." And I'm saying, "Yeah, well, I am too. I'm the production manager." And they've never seen me. I've been so busy.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking that as well about the thing about putting photographs up of yourself in the arts. I have no photographs of myself doing anything. And it's not because I don't do anything, I don't think. It's because I'm always too busy. But I think that definitely crew, from a crew point of view, they really are, it's very hard because an awful lot of them are, well, nearly everybody's freelance. They're dependent on people like me or the people that they work for to get the work. And if they don't get that work, what are they going to do? Where are they going to go? But if we lose them, particularly, I think, crew, if we lose them, we are losing a massive amount of skills that, there'll always be people there to do the work, but they won't have that skill. And the difference it makes when you try and do a show and you hire people in and you know exactly what they can do, and they know you know what you can leave them to do. Whereas you bring somebody in that you don't know, you kind of spend an awful lot of time looking over their shoulder to make sure they do it right, you know, because I learned that very early on.
I mean, actually, Marie, that's really interesting though, in relation to, because that's never spoken about, say, in the other side of, in the creative side of the arts. You know, as a director, you know, people cast shows and they can't, you know, they get to gather a team around you. But the same thing happens with a production manager, or with, you know, or with that side. You cast people into roles based upon their skill set and based upon their ability. And I think that's something really worth amplifying, that same mechanism happens on that side of things as well.
And I think that people think that, you know, I think, oh yeah, they just come in and they move stuff around. It's nothing like that. I remember there was a big kerfuffle a few years ago because somebody made some remark about how, you know, you didn't need to have a degree or something to be a technician. And I think somebody put up the manual for a lighting board and said, okay, read that, you know. And it's that kind of thing. But like, I mean, so many people have put so much of their lives into it and learning things. And a lot of people will go away and they will learn how to do something in order to make themselves more employable, or because they just want to know how to do it. I mean, people are doing it all the time now at the moment, trying to figure out ways of doing things in a different way.
Yeah.
And everybody is trying to upskill. And that's always happened. People have always kind of done that, either through doing a course, like, I mean, like when the Association of Irish Stage Technicians run courses, there's a huge uptake on them, you know. So the fact that people have all these skills there and we're going to lose it it's untenable, you know, that should happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, because I mean, I was joking to Sean, our tech manager here. I mean, he's basically running the place at the moment. He's telling me what I can and can't do. Do you know what I mean? Because that's his skill set. He can kind of, as much, I can come up with all the best ideas in the world for, you know, creative programming, but if you're a tech manager, production manager, going to go, no, you can't do that.
I know, and I am. That's one of the first things I do when I look at a show. I try to find the problems so that I am prepared for them. And I think it frustrates people sometimes, you know, because I'll be going, and they'll be going, don't be so negative. And I'm not being negative. I'm just trying to work my way through it so that we definitely can do it, you know. Yeah. And I also unfortunately inherited my father's cross face, which is not a cross face. It's a concentrating face, as I keep trying to tell people. But everybody's going, what's wrong with you? I'm going, I'm just thinking, you know. So, but that thing about trying to figure out how to do things, I think every single technician in the country at the moment is trying to figure out how we are going to be able to do things. And I think that's why one of the things I suppose I've been thinking about is we're all solution based, because that's what we do all the time. We look at something and we try and figure out how to make it happen. And also we're all risk assessment based now, because like theatre has been, like, I mean, I spend 50% of my time doing risk assessments, you know, so you're used to looking at something and assessing the risk, looking at the hazard and assessing the risk and coming up with a solution for it. And to me, that seems to be the most sensible way to do, like that's what they're doing in Hong Kong, that's what they're doing in South Korea. They're looking at the hazard, which is COVID-19, and bringing it into an enclosed space, and they're figuring out how to get around that.
Yeah.
And we don't seem to be doing, well, we are, the industry is,
yeah.
But the larger society isn't doing that, you know.
No,
I think the industry is putting a lot of time into it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I suppose to flip back a bit, we say we're in case someone finds us on the internet in 10 years and goes, what the hell are you talking about? We're in the middle of a COVID pandemic. But take me back then, Marie, to like the fact that we can talk about massive events then that you've been involved in that seems like another century. You know what I mean? That kind of, you know, like from the Special Olympics to the Parade of all those massive things. Like,
Well, that's one thing that I love doing site specific stuff, and I guess one of the best ones I ever did was the 2003 opening ceremony in Croke Park, which was absolutely phenomenal, phenomenal. Working with Rupert Murray, who's now passed away, and Monica Frawley again, another great person who's left us. But all the people that were working on that, people like David Bulger, people across the industry, everybody working on it, and it was a huge event. And I can remember I was working on it for about 4 or 5 months, and it was non-stop the whole time. We put 76,000 rainbow flags on the seats in Croke Park, which were made by, I think, the prisoners, mostly the prisoners in Mountjoy, as part of a project. And then we got them put on the seats by, I remember supervising all these Boy Scouts and Girl Guides and whatever youth, and they were all in putting them there, and they happened to be there still. We bought them pizza then because they were doing it, because it was tough work, you know.
Yeah.
They happened to be there when the U2 sound check was on, so they were delighted.
U2.
But I'll never forget that. I was backstage, and Rupert said to me, "You need to go out." I hadn't been out since the audience had come in, and he said, "You need to go out." So I went out onto Croke Park, out onto the pitch, and I will never forget it. It was like the hair standing up on the back of your neck. It was incredible, absolutely unbelievable.
But I mean, you also, I mean, I think what's fantastic, kind of having worked with you and looking back in your career, you bring the same diligence to one person show in, like, you know, in Axis or in another venue, to the work you do in the National Theatre, or to the work you do in site specific. And I remember having worked with you for a long time, say here on like Dermot Bulger shows, and as you say, the shows that are behind me, you've kind of worked on.
Yes.
Oh yes. But also you kind of like they're kind of theatre based. But I remember when you took on production managing a gig that I did for the Mansion House, say, sort of about 5 or 6 years ago. But that was a very different animal. But just the same, I mean, I suppose what you're brilliant at is that kind of hub. You know, you become the repository of the information. And I think that's where your face comes on. It's like when you don't have the information, that's where the problems occur. Do you know what I mean? But I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things as well, though, about production management is that 9 times out of 10, a production manager is working on their own. And if you look at every other kind of section, like a stage manager will have an ASM or 2.
Yeah.
A director may have an assistant director, or at the very least they have the stage manager.
Yeah.
Everybody has assistants. Well, not always. Costume designers don't sometimes. But production managers generally tend to be on their own, and they're trying to oversee everything. And it can be quite, but to go back to the point you were making there about giving the same attention to a big job as a small job, every job deserves that, you know. And I guess one of the biggest, when I was working as a costume designer in film, one of the biggest compliments I was ever paid was somebody said to me, who was an extra on it, that I gave the same regard to somebody who was an extra as I did to somebody who was an. I don't do that on purpose. It just is the way I am, you know. I mean, and it would be the same thing with doing shows and doing anything I do. Nothing is lesser.
Yeah.
You know, everybody who is involved in something is making something that they want to make, or, you know, I mean, something maybe more commercial, but it's still, everybody wants it to be the best it can possibly be, you know.
I mean, I think, you know, you mentioned politics, but I mean, that's a more of a value system, or an internal kind of value system that one has that, you know, breeds a certain type of politics. But talk to me about, like, say, obviously, you know, production manager, production designer, costume designer, some set design, some stage management. Like, when you say from a costume design point of view, do you have a kind of point that you start from all the time, or does it depend on the people that you're working with, Marie? Like, it kind of, you know, do you have a way of working?
Yeah, well, doing costume design, obviously, it starts with the script. I like to kind of sometimes, like, it depends on the script. If it's a script that's in existence, like if there's a Shakespearean script or a script of a play that's been done many times, the reading of the script is less important than the conversation with the director about what the vision is for the play. Whereas if it's a new play, I'm conscious of the fact that this may change, you know. And also, I guess there are some directors that the way they work is they come into rehearsal and it evolves, you know. It's kind of, it changes from week to week, whereas other directors come in and they've pretty much storyboarded what they want.
Yes.
So obviously that's preferable for somebody who's doing costumes who is on a time scale, because if somebody changes their mind in week 3, you're going, oh my God, how am I going to have all this stuff done now?
Yeah.
You know. So, but I usually do a fair bit of research around. If it's a historical play, I'll do some historical research. But I also like to do, like, look at things like color and stuff like that. Like, I remember doing something and I was just looking at paintings all the time that had really bright colors in them. Or I'll find. I remember doing, when I was doing Dermot's plays for in the Axis, and I think it was Townlands of Brazil. I think it was that one. And I remember driving around Dublin, looking at the new lamps on the motorways, you know, the street lamps, because I was looking for something that looked like it was encroaching, you know. So you'll find things, or sometimes I'll follow if I'm doing costumes, I follow people down the street just to kind of, not stalkery, but just to look at them, just to see what they're wearing, you know, and see how it moves and things like that.
Yeah.
Because there's things about costume that the costume has to be right for the character in the play, but it also has to be wearable by the actor, you know.
Well, I think that they're always really interesting conversations, because you kind of have, like, the mediation piece there it always fascinates me, because people that think they're in charge aren't necessarily in charge at all. So you're kind of going,
Yeah.
you know, you have an idea for a costume, and, you know, the director and the writers there as well, you know, obviously have an idea, but then the actor, you say, well, actors mainly, you know, the practicality of it, I think would be to the forefront of, you know, that.
Well, I think the thing about the marrying of the idea that the director has, and this is for everything that goes into any given production, the idea that what the director has, the idea that the designer, the costume designer, or the lighting designer, or whatever, but mostly the costume designer, because it's directly related to the actor, and the idea that the actor has for the character they're playing. If the actor has a totally different notion about what the character is to what the costume designer has, it's not going to work either. So there's no point, you know. So having conversations. Some actors don't want to talk about costume; just want to wear it. But some actors then want to be involved in what it's going to be, you know. And you have to be able to take that on board and be, I suppose, trying to find a way to mediate between especially if you know something isn't right and is not going to work.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, they're hard. They can be hard yards, those, you know, those spaces. And, you know, we've all been in companies that kind of things haven't worked in. But it's also that knowing, I think you know, what you're great at, and most kind of people in the arts that are very good, obviously you have a line in relation to what it is, but once that's agreed, there's a kind of the freedom there in relation to being open, but not kind of going, if you tell me this, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of.
Oh yeah. There are times, you know. I mean, I learned a lot working on films where you've got to. There are other things that, like, I mean, you might take on a shirt and the director or the cameraman will say that's not going to work on film, and you looked at it in the shop and it looked great, you know, or you looked at it on the actor and it looked great. So I learned a lot about having to compromise, I suppose, and to having to look forward, look ahead, and try and see what might not work, and why it might not work, which is quite important, you know. Being able to foresee something and see why it might not be possible for either the character to wear it or the actor to wear it, or, you know, for for whatever reason it's not going to, or it might be that you suddenly see, oh my God, there's 3 people on stage and they're all wearing the same color. You know, I mean, like in film, a lot of the time, say if you've got 2 characters and they look quite alike, you know, maybe they're the same build, same color hair, then it's really important that the colors they wear to help the audience or the watcher distinguish. Whereas on stage, it's you'll find that out much quicker, but you mightn't find out until you're looking at the rushes that are they're actually in front of the camera. And obviously, it's much more expensive to make a mistake like that in film. So you do get to spend a lot of time thinking about the consequences of a design decision that you might make, you know.
Yeah, and moving between all those different kind of, you know, contexts in theater, like I suppose like in a production manager role, you know, you're kind of might be going into an organization or a company that you may have worked with, you may have not worked with, and at different times as well. Because I mean, sometimes production managers are brought in when something's gone wrong. You know,
that's happened a few times. Yeah.
But that sense of kind of, you know, I feel that mediation role is worth amplifying. That sense of kind of being able to take the temperature of kind of what's going on, and or also be able to take the temperature of what way people prefer guidance, or you know, or take guidance.
It's I guess there's a thin line. There's also a thing where you don't want to. I mean, you can. I can take an awful lot of shit. You know, basically, it's part of it. It kind of is part of the job that you just have to let it roll off you. You know, from all sorts of different. You might have 4 different people ringing you up. You might have somebody ringing you up about transport or something, roaring at you, and you know, or something maybe you forgot to do because you were so busy. So, I mean, it's most of the time it's not something that I would care about. But every so often there's something thrown into the mix, which is now the best shows, and the shows I think that are most successful are the ones where people know each other and they all know how each other works and they all are really competent at their work. And there's been a relationship developed up. And if you look at, say, some of the better, like Martin Scorsese or someone like that, who always worked with the same crew, if you look at people who always kind of try and get the same people on. And any time I've done shows where we've all worked together quite a lot and we all get on really well, the shows have been really, really straightforward and really easy. The hard ones are the ones where you go in and you have a way of working and it doesn't match up to somebody else's way of working, and there's conflict. And I don't like conflict, and what I should do sometimes is go up and say, listen, is there a problem? And I don't always do that, you know. I go, so, and that's a personal thing, you know, and I know that about myself, and I try to get over it. And one of the things that I'm quite good at, I'll always say, oh yeah, that was my fault, I'm sorry, just to smooth things out, which is part of the mediation thing. But every so often I can't do that. You know, something in me that just goes, no, I'm not doing that. And when that happens, then it can be quite difficult. It's only happened. I mean, if I think about how long I've been working in theatre, I could count on half a hand the number of shows where I really, really, really wanted to walk out, you know. So I mean, 90% of the time, 99% of the time, anything that comes up, it's usually to do with people being stressed. People being not fully confident. There's 3 things that make it happen. One is somebody is working on 3 different jobs and they're totally stretched. 3 or 4 at the same time, all in different places, and they have to be in 3 or 4 different cities in the same week. The other thing is just pure stress. Some people just get stressed because if you think about, say, 4 weeks rehearsal, then a very, very short, intense production period, and then a show, and it all has to work. Everything has to work. So people do get stressed. And another thing that happens, I think, is it's just a personal thing. You know, some people just don't, you're not supposed to, you're not meant to get on with everyone. Just look at Twitter, you know.
Yeah. Come here, Marie, in relation to, say, you know, work that you've done. I mean, obviously you can see it. There's people that, you know, you mentioned Donald, you mentioned Joe O'Byrne, you know, obviously even association with Axis and kind of and beyond that, kind of Dermot Bulger's work with kind of Raymond Keane and Barabbas and kind of that, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And and you've been involved in some amazing seminal shows, but also you kind of, you look through your kind of your CV, as I was kind of going through the Irish Calligraphy yesterday, kind of going, my God, if I started, like, you know, from the Risen People and spoke right up to kind of last year or this year, we'd be here for 7 or 8 hours. I mean, probably wouldn't have even touched the thing of it. But are there shows that you've kind of have memorable in relation to, because you're a big arty head as well. Do you mean, I think that's the thing, you're kind of,
yeah. Yes, like, I mean, virtually every show I've done has had something in it that I really, really, and sometimes they've been really difficult, but they've always had things in them that you just go, oh my God, that was brilliant. Mm-hmm. I remember when we were doing, this was hilarious. We were talking about it recently, myself and Joe O'Byrne, when we did the sinking of the Titanic and other matters. Joe and Declan and Liam O'Neill, who sadly passed away recently from COVID, which was an awful loss to everyone. And the sinking of the Titanic was hugely ambitious, massively typical co-motion, enormous cast. Joe wanted everything, and it was just it was in the SFX, the old SFX, and there was musicians, and oh my God, it was just amazing. But there was I was doing costumes on it, and there was huge amount of costumes. There was people playing double and triple characters, and and I remember, this is what me and Joe were laughing about recently. There was something like 25. I had to recreate 25 of the life jackets to make them look like Cork life jackets. And Joe said that I said, they're a prop. And he was going, they're a costume, they're a prop, they're a costume. And we had this big row. And Declan and Liam O'Neill came in and said, let's see what we can do. And my sister Paula, who was just after finishing a biotechnology degree in Cork University, was at a loose end. And I rang her up and said, come up here and help me. And that's how Paula Tierney got into theatre.
Wow.
That was a phenomenal show. That was great. It's still brilliant.
But I mean, like, it's funny, you mentioned Donald earlier on, and kind of, you know, meeting them and doing the, you know, Dunn Stores workers and street theatre. But you have got an association with Donald throughout the years. I mean, you worked on a lot of his shows.
Well, we did, I suppose, one of the biggest ones, longest ones, rather, we did was Bat the Father, Rabbit the Son.
Yeah.
And I can remember we started that out as Rabbit in the Bagot, doing it in the Bagot Inn at lunchtime. And then Rough Magic took it over, and Donald wrote a full play for it, and toured it everywhere. Toured it to Australia, New Zealand, all around the UK, loads and loads of places. And I think Donald's still doing it.
Yeah, he did it 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah. I wasn't involved with that, but I can remember the last night we were in New Zealand. We were at a festival in Wellington, and it was the 100th show we'd done at that point, and that's neither today nor yesterday. Wow. But like, working with Donald's phenomenal, you know. I mean, his enthusiasm and his energy and his imagination, you know, just unbelievable. And I've always, I wish I'd done more with him now, since he moved out of Dublin. I don't see him as much, but he's absolutely brilliant, you know.
So come here, the Donald's one, but also there are writers throughout your career that you've had an association with their work. Dermot, obviously you've done the trilogy and much more here, but you also, was it Wet Paint years ago? Was it the first Lament for Art Cleary?
It was Lament for Art Cleary. It's a long time ago.
Wow.
Wet Paint a long time ago as well.
And but also, I mean, the seminal work working with Ray Yates, who was the arts officer and director of Axis at the time. I mean, those first 3 plays were just an extraordinary time here.
I know, that was absolutely amazing. In fact, I did my MA dissertation on the Ballymun trilogy.
Wow, there you go.
But it was amazing. It was even amazing in Ballymun at the time because the towers were coming down as well. It's just around that time when all of that was happening, and you come out here to rehearse and you'd be parking your car on top of a nettle patch and things like that at the back because there was no regeneration. But that was really brilliant. Like, I mean, from these green heights, but like the story, being able to see the story of what was happening both in society and in Ballymun was brilliant. And Dermot, of course, is absolutely amazing. I would say that those three plays, the trilogy, were really something that I look back on. I think I absolutely loved working on those.
Yeah.
Because I did costumes and set, I think, on them.
No, there were. It was a special time. I mean, it's funny kind of looking back on it, because they actually in my brain are still current, but actually they're kind of, the first one was 16 years ago now, so you're kind of going, Jesus. But also, I mean, you kept an association with here, and as I say, you look behind on the walls, but like say Dermot played that, like the Parting Glass in 2010, which kind of still has life, but that went, from here on the most, emotional opening night I've ever been at, with Dermot obviously had a very tragic loss directly before it, but the work, I think working with you, we mentioned kind of teams, but it becomes more than everyone fits into their role and does their thing, but they're part of a whole vision. That's when real stuff can
you don't. I mean, you do save. I suppose practically you save a lot of time because you don't have to do all that.
Getting to know you.
They're getting to know people and how they work and things like that. So I mean, you just slot in and you just carry on. You just do that. I mean, I also thought that the version of Ulysses that was in the Abbey that that was very exciting because I was doing production management on that.
Yeah,
so that was brilliant. It was a brilliant thing to do. It was amazing.
And a lot of moving parts in that as well.
Yes.
But I think for me, you mentioned you were talking about again back to big stage kind of Abbey work, but you kind of also we were speaking earlier on, or coming clean in the many tech problems we've had doing this interview and the breaks between them. You mentioned one of your favorites with the I Heart Alice, Heart I, which is an absolutely gorgeous show, and that must have been a marvelous experience to kind of work on that.
That was absolutely brilliant. I didn't do the very first one. I think it was on in the Fringe, the very first one, and then I took over when it was in the Dublin Theatre Festival, and then we toured it quite a lot and did it in loads of different places. But it was just, I mean, it's a terrific show, first of all. Amy and Claire are absolutely brilliant. Amy is a wonderful writer. But the crack we had, that was the best crack I've ever had on a tour anywhere. We did it in Paris, I remember, and we did it, I think, in Croatia or somewhere like that. But everywhere we went with it, we had such a good time, and there was such a great response to the show. Love to do it again, actually.
And there's companies like you've done a lot of work with Fish On, and I'm not going to list them off. You've done kind of loads of work with everyone, but Barabbas back in the day, you would have kind of been in around that kind of quite a lot back then.
Yeah, well, I think I remember come down from the mountain, John Clown. I made the set, which was a big, kind of a huge big house made out of calico. And I remember we made it. I can't remember. I think was it Kathy White or someone helped me? No, it wasn't. Somebody helped me with it. An actress helped me with it in the Morrison Hotel, which wasn't the Morrison then. It was a big old art kind of warehouse. And I remember making that with doors and windows and everything and trying to figure it out. But Barabbas was when the three, when Michael and Veronica and Raymond were together in the beginning. Like, it was hysterical. Like, I mean, everything was funny, So rehearsals were funny. Everything was great crack, and what they were doing was so off the wall and so brilliant, that it was just really, really wonderful. And then going down through the years, and doing all the other shows, and then I think finally it was the last one I did, Johnny Patterson.
Yes.
I think. But like everything that I did Hurl, did City of Clowns, which was brilliant because you were going around and you were getting involved with locals. I found in that one time as well. One place. But everything like that, it was always very exciting. And that's the thing about an awful lot of companies. Like, I mean, like last year working on the alternative with Fishamble, demands are being made on you to create something that you look at and go, how are we going to do that? And then you work it out, and it's just the best feeling, you know, to feel like you have achieved something that was going to be really difficult. Like, I mean, we want 2 elephants. We want an elephant that's a daddy and a baby elephant for Johnny Patterson, you know.
But I think that's something, you know, that's key. You mentioned excitement there, because I think there is that sense of, well, carnival, run away with the circus, but that sense of making something happen or making something work. And I think, you know, you mentioned about kind of being able to risk assess up front, kind of about what might happen. But once you have that put away then and done, then you can kind of create something magic.
Well, it's not that kind of like it's intertwined. You know, you can be doing all the what a lot of people think is boring stuff. I don't find it that boring. I just find it's solution based. So it's all going towards the same thing. But I do think that you can feel sometimes when a show is going to absolutely be brilliant, you know, and it's you can just feel it tingling in your, you know, this show is going to be good. Or you can get involved in a show that you wanted to get involved in and you couldn't do it the first time, and then it comes back. Like Circus, for instance, Brab's show Circus. I did it when I went over to the Festival Ideas of Arts and Ideas in New Haven, and that was something else, you know. I mean, that was so exciting as well. I mean, but that notion of thinking big, and that's why it would be so criminal if we have to shrink everything back down, because that thing where, like, even like from the sinking of the Titanic to Circus to the alternative last year, all things which were being done with, you know, not saying, you know, that it would have been great if you'd had millions of pounds to do them, but if you'd had a Les Mis type budget, but you were still able to do it, and you were still able to make it happen. And that to me is that excitement is still there. I mean, I still get as excited about some things as I did in the project on the Risen People, you know. So I suppose that's a good thing, you know.
I mean, a huge part of your, I mean, you mentioned the other part of your work has been a teacher, and you have association with Cláiste Dúlaigh for many, many years. But beyond that, you know, I think what I hear a lot back from the industry is that your mentorship and guidance and being that kind of beacon for younger production people coming through, that seems to be hugely important, you know, well, both for the wider industry, but also for you personally.
Yeah, well, one of the things I kind of fell into doing, I didn't set out to go, I didn't look for that job. Somebody phoned me up when I was in, I think, Edinburgh at the festival, and said, we need somebody to teach set design for 4 hours a week. Can you come and do it? And I said, yes. And I ended up getting caught up in it and discovered, despite never having thought about it before, that I really loved doing it. And I really liked teaching. And I started out in the beginning not knowing what I was doing. And then over the years, I got very good at it. And what I realized that I like most about it is finding people who don't know what they want to do or don't know what they're good at, and giving them an opportunity to find that. I mean, one of the things that I used to do up to this year, I've changed the course a little bit now, was one where the students were able to write a play, produce it, direct it if they wanted, perform in it if they wanted, and then we'd put it on as part of a festival of new writing. And loads of them would start out going, I can't write, and then they would, and then they'd write another play. And I find that thing of people being able to discover something, and even if they only ever did it once, the kick they got out of seeing their own work on the stage, that's absolutely brilliant. But also I can usually spot people coming through that I know are going to be good, and I'm sort of scooching them out, like the likes of Susie, for instance, or Sean, people like that. So myself and Conleth used to work on the course in Inchicore as well, and we'd be constantly pushing people out into the industry. for them to get experience, you know, particularly anyone we thought was good.
Yeah, but even still, like, even when people are beginning in the industry, and your name comes up as being a touchstone for people, you know, like it's kind of a.
Yeah. Well, I've always left myself open, you know. I mean, there's kind of anybody can ring me up anytime and ask me how to do something, and I'll help them if I can. Or anybody, like I always say that to the students when they're finishing the course, you know, you can come back and you can touch base with me anytime, or any help I can give you, because, you know, people helped me over the years. Everybody needs to help. You get back more than you get put in. Like, I mean, a lot of the people that have come through the course as well, I've helped them. And then when I've needed crew, I've hired them, and it's been really good, you know. So it's like the likes of John Crudden and Susie again and people like that, you know, all through. In fact, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, I found myself on the pavilion stage, and Ron Fingleton went to Colossadulig as well. But there was like 6 people on the stage, and I had tutored all of them at some point.
Well,
you know,
that says it all, really.
I know.
I won't keep it much longer, but I'm interested in, you mentioned the passion is still there and the enjoyment and the joy is still there, but also the kind of the politics, or but with a small p, or like that kind of, you know, that frustration, or, you know, that kind of drive, say, for social change is still very much there, both within your work and within you.
Well, absolutely. Well, I mean, you can't live, well, I can't live in society without seeing what it is that's wrong with it, first of all, and try to do something about that. It can be really frustrating. I mean, Ireland is an incredibly racist society. Like, I mean, if you think about, I look at direct provision and I go, we took these people in from horrendous situations. We're supposed to be minding them. We're supposed to be looking after them, and look what's happening. So I think that's going to be a big thing for me anyway this year, is trying to help in any way I can. But also you've got all these other things that are happening. Like there's inherent kind of cruelty and racism in Irish society. If you go back to the Magleton laundries, the industrial schools, if you look at, say, the constant racism that's directed against travellers, if you look at everything in society, the homelessness now, how anyone can walk down the street and see somebody in a wet sleeping bag on the street and not think that you need to do something about that. I don't understand that. And that's always going to be in me, to try and do that. And there's an awful lot of people in the arts who feel like that. Yeah. And do their best to try and do something. But it really behoves the government, you know, to step in now and start doing something about that. But on a smaller political level, say our section of it as well, that trying to, if we, like, because I believe that everything we do, when we put on a performance and people see it, it makes them feel better about themselves, or if not better, it makes them see things in a different way. And if we lose everybody in this industry and we're not able to do that, I think society as a whole is really going to suffer, you know?
Yeah, no, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think there's, it kind of, I think that the longer you're on the planet, or the longer you're kind of alive in any one country, you realize it's beyond party politics. It's actually systemic political structures in a way that, and I think there's an opportunity in a time of, you know, a global pandemic with lots of kind of, you know, horrific stuff going on in health, but in a reawakening from that, you know, we're never going to get another opportunity to place the arts alongside a lot of those kind of, you know, new societal models that's kind of needed. Yeah.
I just don't think, I had real, I know we were all scared to death at the beginning of this, when it all happened. But I think now, as people are coming out of it, I'm beginning to see a real cruelty in people, you know, online mostly, where people are just, I don't know whether, like, some people have changed a little bit, but most people are coming back out and they're going, why can't we do this? Why can't we open the schools? Why can't we open the pubs? It's gone away. And the thing hasn't gone away. But I suppose the one thing I would say about the whole experience of the last 3 months is that it has, because people haven't been, there hasn't been all this rushing around, people have been able to see things like what's going on in direct provision, see things like, I mean, everybody who works with the homeless continues to go out on the streets all the time during this to look after people as best they could, you know, and they're still having to do that. And that's not gone away, and it didn't go away during the pandemic. The traffic went away, but the homelessness didn't, you know. So I just think that everybody needs to look, into their hearts and try and find a way that they can make a difference to that. I mean, add your voice to something like trying to get better conditions for people, trying to change the housing, trying to, sorry. I'm getting carried away, but everybody needs to, I think everybody needs to do that. But because we are in a very privileged position in the arts, we can highlight it, you know? And I think we need to take that on board, and we need to do that as best we can.
Well, that's a very good point, actually, that, you know, is that the privilege that we have is having the creativity and the structures in which we can amplify things, even through discussion or through kind of, you know, our own art forms. And I think you're right, that is key. Yeah,
I know. And I just hope that people do. I mean, I think that there is a huge empathy within the art world, the arts. I don't mean the art world, I mean the arts generally. There is a huge empathy, and there is particularly in theatre. Like if you go on any protest for Palestine, if you go on any march against homelessness, you always found people. There was always a big gang of people from theatre on it, you know. And I mean, if you look at, say, previous movements like Waking the Feminists, we have an opportunity because we do have a public platform, if we ever get it back, that we can use, you know. We do have that, and we do have connections all around the world, so we can connect to people. But most importantly, we can take an issue and we can interpret it, we can show people what it is that is wrong with society, and try and make them understand that they can do something about it, that you don't have to be so insular and so anti everybody. We're all humans, we all live on the planet. I do not understand cruelty towards fellow human beings. I just do not understand that. I just can't get my head around that.
Well, that's something key that you said there, that you know, because I think, you know, particularly online discourse kind of things turn into anti something. So you become, rather than kind of being, as you mentioned, big part of your skill set is being solution driven, but an awful lot of it goes into, you know, mudslinging or stone throwing, rather than kind of going, well, there is ways of actually kind of collaborating and looking for solutions.
Yeah, I know. And I always think that when you look at, say, the way in which, say, if you say any given production, it starts out, you run into issues and problems, you solve them, you put on the production, and it's everybody applies their skill set to it. If you could get people like that, people who work in theatre, into government, you know, with their solution driven instead of politics driven. Well, I suppose mine would probably be politics driven, but that solution driven way of doing things, where you're looking for a way to make everything work. And like, I just don't understand how there is the opportunity and there is the way of making things work. It's not difficult to fix direct provision. It's not difficult to fix homelessness. It might be a little bit bigger, but it isn't beyond the scope of our society or our government. And I just hope that they do take that on board. But meanwhile, I think we in the arts are all going to be here nipping at their heels. And well, I hope some of us are anyway, going to be there trying to hold them to account.
Yeah. Marie, it's been an absolute joy chatting to you, as always. And just to say, you know, everyone that I talk about anything in theatre, your name comes up, and it's kind of, people hold you in the highest regard for the work that you continue to do and do for and with people. So thanks a million for coming on this, and thanks for that. And look forward to having a couple with you in the near future.
In the future. Well, yeah. I mean, I think they only talk about me because I'm old, and I've been around a long time. But thanks very much. It was great crack.
Well,
All right.
bye.